Okay. Okay.
Oh, there you
Go
go.
live.
Yeah,
I
we're
think-
live. It's going.
Are we
It's
live?
happening. Yeah, we're 7 seconds in.
We're 7 seconds in.
Yeah.
We're live, everybody, and I've got my really, really wonderful friend Mike King, who's joining us on a really busy day. If you don't know who Mike King is, then I'm not going to do a big intro. Everybody knows who you are. New Zealander of the Year, great man. It's really funny because the people that are on Essential Talent, and Mike does a lot of different bookings directly himself. He's with other agencies as well, but we're lucky to have him as part of Essential Talent as well. But a lot of people that I represent, people think, oh, you must know them really well. It's like, no, I don't. It's not like I go around to their place for a barbecue or anything like that. I just represent them. But I've known Mike for, I don't know, probably 30 years.
Long before the fame and the fortune.
Way before the fame and the fortune. And we're very good friends. We're good mates. You know, I love him like a brother.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thanks.
Can I just say to everyone out there, the time and the care that you've put into that backdrop, that's special. That is so special. I mean, to get that color gray to match your shirt,
I know,
is just unbelievable. And it really brings out the color in your eyes.
I know.
Yeah, I know. There's not many people that can, like, look at my shitty backdrop. What have I got? I've got the Prime Minister. Nothing at all. But look at you. That's all I've got. The Prime Minister holding a gumboot. You know.
So what? But
yeah.
This is where it's at. This is simple.
Yeah, well, see, this is why you have been in broadcasting for as long as you have.
It's the
because you take the time. Yeah,
it is.
It's always been the finer details.
It's the smaller things. It's those tiny things that all add up.
Well, everyone puts so much effort into the 99%, forgetting that the 1% is the 99%. So, exactly. But you. An old master, master.
I'm just wondering, because I'm chatting to Otis Frizzell later on tonight, who I like the bits.
Now there's talent.
Man.
There's talent.
Otis, and great hearts, those boys. Boy, they do a lot of great stuff.
I have got 2 of Otis's artworks on my wall in my hallway. Him and Mike.
Yeah,
him and Mike. So I've got my wife bought me the Tino Rangatira coloured fist, which hangs on my wall in my hallway, along with the Max Gimlet and Stanley Palmer. So and Brad Novak. So I've got, and Lester Hall. So I've got these really cool artists on my wall, and I've got a Dick Frizzell there too. Not an original, because fuck, who can afford one of those?
But do you know what I do? This is what I do, and I'm not an arty person. I certainly couldn't have afforded a Dick Frizzell, but I came across their art, and I was like, wow, I really like that. And I think I get the cheap versions, the prints, whatever. But what I do is whenever I
don't have any of those artists that I just mentioned. I don't have any of their originals. Please, But it just sounds like I know what I'm talking about, right? Like, I've got a Brad, I've got a Novak.
I've got but when I have a little milestone in my business to celebrate, what I do is I buy a print or something from Otis and Mike, and it's like
wow. There's something we have in common, because when I have a little success in my work, I buy an ice cream. So we've got so much going on.
I know.
Can you feel the connection, people? Because I can feel it. I can feel it. It's in here. It's in here.
Do you know the story that I've told you about 150 times? Is when and I'll never forget this, because Banjo, please don't bite my hand. Is when my father, and he's rolling his eyes, going, "Oh God, here we go, hear this story again." So when they used to do stand-up.
Who, your father or me?
Stand-up comedy at Kitty O'Brien's.
Yeah, way back.
Mike did this gig, and my father, who had come up to Auckland to do Kelly Tarleton's, everything like that, he was like, this guy
bloody comedy. What are you bloody
comedy?
bringing
What's this
me
all
here
about? Bloody
for?
hell.
What the bloody hell, talking and carrying on and swearing and
about
cussing?
there? And the tears rolling down his eyes, and he said, that guy is better than Billy T. James. That's what he said. And I said, well, come and meet him. And I hadn't actually known you for that long. You weren't famous then, I don't think. And
no.
You were so kind to him, man. You were so kind. You're just a naturally kind person. I know that you've completely changed your life and everything. But even back then in those early days, you were actually a very, very kind person. You've always had that in your heart.
You.
Now you sort of got to show everybody. So, okay.
Thank you, brother.
No, you know that. So tell me this. When did this all begin? Let's forget about Gumboot Friday for now. We'll come back to that. What was the trigger point that made you go from I'm not doing comedy any longer to I'm going to change people?
Let's go right back, shall we?
Okay.
Go right back to the comedy,
yes.
Where it all started. So for me, as a kid growing up, I was, always that kid that never felt like I was good enough. Everyone else was better than me. My hero growing up was my dad. Loved my dad. I was always looking to impress my dad. My dad was your typical Kiwi bloke. He was good with his hands, could build anything. He was a great musician, could play any instrument, couldn't read music, could play anything. I remember him bringing home a set of bagpipes one time, and within 24 hours, he was playing them like he was part of the Royal Scots Brigade, whatever it is, the Royal Scottish Band. He was a great sportsman, which is really important to a young kid. Growing up in New Zealand, that your dad's good at sports. He was a good-looking fellow with lots of friends, and I wanted to be just like my dad. Sadly, I had feet for hands. I couldn't build anything. I was useless at sports. I was tone deaf, and I was an ugly child. So for me, I really struggled as a kid, and to hide those struggles, I had this brash exterior. I was a really boisterous kid, really loud, really obnoxious, and really confident. But underneath all of that, there was a kid who was terrified that people were going to find out I was vulnerable. So I was always looking to be world champion at something. I wanted to be world champ, so my old man would look at me and go, "Yeah, that's my boy." But I was one of those kids there that also knew very early if I was going to be good at something, and I didn't want to just be good or better than average. I had to be the best in the world. So that meant I was a brilliant starter of projects. And as soon as I realized I couldn't be world champion, I quit, which really pissed my old man off because, his whole thing was once you start something, mate, you've got to see it right through the end. You've got to see it through to the end. So I really struggled. So when I was at school, I was, goofy looking kid and always on the outside. And it wasn't until I cracked my first joke at 8 years old. The day I cracked my first joke, and it was after a mate of mine had told this joke and no one laughed, and they're all taking the piss out of him and trying to get him to tell the joke again. And I jumped in and told the joke, exactly the same joke, minutes later, and everyone pissed themselves. And at that moment there, I got my taste for comedy. Why? Because in those days, I just wanted to be loved. I didn't like myself, and I just wanted to be loved. My old man wasn't one of those people that said out loud that he loved you, and nor was my mum, to tell you the truth. So for me, laughter transformed. That was people liking me and adoring me. So all I wanted to do from that day forward was to be a comedian. Well, so I was the great joke teller at school. Get to 15 years old, school's not working out. My old man came to me one day, said, how's this bloody school? And I was like, yeah, no good, I'm useless. He goes, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I wouldn't mind being I like cooking breakfast at the time. I said, I wouldn't mind I like cooking. And he goes, right, rightio. So 2 days later, he's taken me to a place called El Matador. in Simon Street in Alden. Our Matador was New Zealand's.
We've lost your sound. Oh, wait, we're back
have
now.
we?
No, we're back now.
So the old man took me to Al Matador, very first a la carte restaurant that had a license, New Zealand's first licensed restaurant. And he took me up there. I went in there in one of the old man's cut-down suits. I was 4'11". The old lady cut down one of the old man's suits. He put me on. Remember, this is in the 70s, right? And everybody in there are cool. You know, they've got the long hair, they've got the beads, they've got the flares, they've got the platforms. I walk in with this suit, 4'11", my balls haven't dropped. They're all pissing themselves when I walk in. And the old man's like, just bloody ignore them. Don't worry about them. And a plumber came out and he goes, oh, Dick. He doesn't know, man. Hey, Dick, is this your boy? He goes, yeah, this is him. Right out. Come on. So we went in. We went straight into the boss's office. The boss asked me 2 questions. He goes, right, you got the job. And I was like, you know, that's when I learned the first thing my dad taught me. It's not what you know, it's who you know. You can know everything in the world, but if you don't know anyone, it doesn't do you any good. And I remember with great pride, he walked out into that room and all these hipsters were in this room, all with big smirks on his face. And he walked out and goes, well, you can all fuck off now because he got the job. Little did he know, a couple of months later, I was at Polytech with all of these hipster cats because we were all studying our London City and Guild. So I was cooking, but all the while I was wanting to be a comedian. So after I finished my apprenticeship, I jumped into started hanging out with the Mongrel Mob, and
as you do.
Yeah, well, you know, so just a Māori boy, and you know, so they were kind of my idol. So I was living in Morningside and Don Crute Street, Morningside up here in Auckland, and the Headhunters were on our street, the Mongrel Mob were on our street, and so were the Highway 61. So, you know, I was an impressionable young fella, ended up drinking with the mob, and then ended up in an incident with the president of the Mongrel Mob where he nearly ran over a rival gang in the car. And I remember turning to him as we were driving away, and I was like, what the hell would have happened if you'd hit them? And the smile on his face said to me, oh, I'll be driving. I was going to go to jail for that. And I thought I didn't want to do this. So I rang my uncle, who was the secretary of the Seamen's Union at the time, and he got me away to sea. So that was the start of my merchant Navy career. I was in the merchant Navy for about 13 or 14 years, and I used to work. One of the best jobs I had was working on the inter-island ferries. And while I was there, my second cook said to me one day, I was a chief cook on the inter-island ferry, and I'd been there a few years, and a guy called Max Wilby, who was a really cool guy. Now, Max was the guy that got Noel Leeming started. So Noel was an old refrigerator repair guy down in Christchurch. And he used to go around to people's houses and pick up their fridges, take them away, repair them, and drop them back off. And Max said to him one day, he says, you know, why don't you bloody start, you know, instead of fixing these things, why don't you start selling fridges? And he goes, well, how do I do that? And Max said, well, you know, you get these fridges and then you pick them up, instead of repairing them, you fix them and you put them in the shop and you start selling them, which is what he did. Well, this guy said to me, look, you're really funny. Have you ever thought about being a stand-up comedian? I was like, no, no, I haven't. He goes, well, you should, because you're really funny. And I was like, oh, yeah, well, I don't know what to do. He goes, I'll tell you what you do. Every time you say something funny, write it down in a book. Just put it down in a book. And even if it doesn't make sense, as soon as you make people laugh, write it down and put it in a book. And I said, yeah, so what do I do with that? He goes, well, when you've got enough funny things in your book, if you ever have a story or something like that, always go back to the book, because you know that there's funny lines in the book and you can put them in and you can build stories around these funny lines. And I was like, holy crap, I can do that. So what I discovered was, when I put these funny punchlines in, most people will like work on a story first and then figure out a punchline. So that's why sometimes you see comedians who have this really cool story that you're really invested in, and then you get to the end and there's a shit punchline and you feel like you've been cheated. So what I did was always start a joke with the punchline, and I would work back from the punchline. That way, if the story was shit, I would still have funny to fall back on. So that's where the comedy actually started to come in, and then
I spoke to Scotty Blanks the other day. I don't know if you've seen the interview. And
no, I haven't. No.
Well, if you get, you're too busy at the moment to watch interviews. But anyway, and he said, I touched briefly on you in the comedy. He said that on your first night, you came up to him, and this sounds something that you would do back then. You went up to him and said, "Oh, forget about this amateur night. I'm not going to do that. Just throw me straight into pro night, and if I don't nail it, I'll buy a drink for everyone in the bar, and you'll never see me again."
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, what Scott hadn't realised at the time was I'd been to the 3 previous Thursday nights, and I'd watched. Now, the first night that I watched, I thought these guys were unbelievable. Corbett Brothers, Radar, Cal Wilson was doing a double act back then with Brendan Lovegrove.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were a double act. Sugar and Spice. Yeah, Sugar and Spice were
brilliant.
And we had David Downs, we had Johnny Bridges, and I thought they were brilliant. And I went back the next Thursday, and they told the same jokes again, and I was like, okay, well, they're still great. Third week, the same jokes again. I went, oh, these guys are shit. No, seriously. I mean, and so my comedy, being in the Merchant Navy, I'd been around the world, so I'd got VHS copies and showreel copies of real stand-up comedians. Richard Pryor and Bill Cosby and Dave Allen with his bung one finger. So stand-up comedy was about talking about your real life experiences and making them funny. What these guys were doing was more university reviewing type, that type of university comedy where they played characters, up here for thinking, down here for dancing, which was one of the Corbett Brothers famous routines that they did back in the day. Can you just play that a little bit? Yeah.
You're talking about Corby's.
Yeah. So watching these guys. So I thought, then I had to go home and work out what style of comedy I was going to use. Now, Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy were my heroes. Yeah. So there were a couple of things that I learned by watching the Lovegroves and everything. Now, each one of these comedians, when they'd go up on stage, they would have moments of perfection. And I would sit there and I would go, leave the stage now. And the biggest mistake every single one of them made was they would go one joke too far. They would go one joke too far, and then they would spend another 10 minutes trying to dig themselves out of the deep hole that they've got themselves into, looking for a laugh to get out. So my thinking was, all right, well, once you find the way out, then you leave the stage. Don't try and bullshit yourself into thinking that you can go on. The other thing that I noticed that they would do was they were all trying to be too original in the beginning. So I was a big fan of the Rolling Stones growing up. Now, when the Rolling Stones started out, they sang covers. They sang Chuck Berry covers. That was their shtick. They were into that rock and roll. They did an English rock version of rock and roll. But they sang covers, and they would slip in one or two original songs. So what I did was I thought, I'm going to take the Rolling Stones approach. New Zealand was still at the joke stage of things, right? So stand-up comedy wasn't about talking about you, because if you're going to talk about you, I need to know who you are. Otherwise, you're just talking shit. If you don't have that affiliation with someone. So what I did was I started using jokes with me in the joke. So instead of 3 guys walking into a bar, it was me and my mate. We went to this bar and da-da-da and da-da-da, punchline, get out. And So I went home and I practiced. Now, the other big mistake comedians were making back in those days is they would ask the audience questions, but they wouldn't have all the answers to the questions. So they would have the natural. So when you ask the audience a question, 80% of them are going to answer the question, right? 15% of them are going to be left field. They're going to have a different response. And 5%, the troublemakers, they're going to have the smart ass comment. And you have to have a comeback for all three of those responses. So you've got to be prepared. You've got to be prepared for all three. Most of them were only prepared for the 85%, right, and then they would get thrown off by the others. So my whole shtick was never ask a question without having all the answers covered. So how did I do that? So what I would do is I went home. I secretly recorded everybody as well. I actually went in there with a video camera in a bag and I recorded the other comedians, not to steal their material, but just to see what they look like and why they were doing what they were doing and where they were making their mistakes. So then I went home and I got my kids' toys and I put them in the garage on couches. So you are my audience. I would notice things like eye line was a really important thing. Whereas a lot of comedians would talk down to the front row and exclude everyone out the back. So I worked out very quickly that the best eye line was 3/4 of the way to the back of the room and glancing around. And if you are talking to someone in the front row, so like I'm talking to you now, include everyone else in the conversation, but always come back on point with the punchline to the person that you're talking to. That way, it's the same as when you're in a crowd, you're talking to one person in a bar and other people suddenly coming in. Like you're still talking to your mate, but you're including everyone else in the conversation to be polite, but you're always going back to your mate. So it really gave you that effect. And all of these little things, the 1%ers, what make up 99% of the performance. So then I got into writing the routine. So I had my jokes already. I had my 2 original jokes in there, and my original jokes were around the South African rugby team. So the South African rugby team had just turned up to New Zealand in 1994, and they turned up with the first ever black rugby player called Chester Williams.
Yes.
And of course, my joke around that was, well, obviously they needed someone to carry the bags, right? So that was my original, and there was a couple of other little gags in there. So, and then I finished with, I had 3 jokes that I wanted to finish with. I think one of those jokes was, when I was going to school, so I opened my set, as I recall, with a mihi. It was e kui mākoro mā tēnā koutou te rangatira mā kia ora mai tātou e ngā mana, e ngā reo, e ngā iwi o te motu no mai haere mai. And as I'm doing this, you can actually physically see people going, oh, Jesus, what's this shit? You can actually see people getting frustrated. But, I'm a big guy, so no one's saying anything. But you could actually ask, for fuck's sake, why are we listening to this shit? And then the punchline to that, Joe, e ngā mana, e ngā reo, e ngā iwi o te motu no mai haere mai tēnā koutou, tēnā no tātou katoa. And then I go, for any of you fellas out there who didn't understand that shit, now you know what school was like for us. And boom, instantly had the end. And then, school. And then, so I also learned really quickly that segueing from one joke to another is probably more important than the joke itself. How you get from one scenario to another scenario. So working on those links for me was really important. So the come out of that one was, now you know what school was like for us. So now I can talk about school straight away, So, oh man, I hated school when I was at school. This is like being at school. I hated school when I was at school, Do you ever have those tests when you're at school? Remember all those tests, all the stupid tests, like maths tests, tests that make maths fun. Like you'd walk into the class, teacher would go, well, if you walk into a dairy and, and a packet of chewing gum costs $2, a can of Coke costs $4, and a packet of chips costs $10, what do you say to the dairy owner? My punchline? A smack in the head at those prices. And, that was, so it was original, but it was still, and then, then I would move on to another actual joke. This was an actual joke. We used to have these stupid spelling tests when I was at school. Remember those spelling tests where you'd come but I would throw in my own little personal flavor into these jokes. So I remember these spelling tests when we were at school, right? We'd all be out in the playground, and then we'd come into the class, and we'd all sit in the mat. Remember, we used to all sit on the mat, and the teacher would say to different people in the class, she'd point to a little, Johnny, what did you do today at lunchtime? Oh, today, miss, at lunchtime, I played in the sandpit with Jill. She said, that's wonderful, Johnny. Little children are playing together. You spelled sand. Oh, easy, miss. S-A-N-D, sand. S-A-N-D, sand. That's wonderful, Johnny, as a reward. So it's one of those Johnny and Jill jokes, right? As a reward, you can go home early. Then she'd look around and go, Jilly, what did you do today at lunchtime? She said, today, miss, I played in the sandpit with Johnny. Well done, Jilly. You spelled pit. 5th form, Massey High School, very tough. Another big laugh there. See what he did there? They're doing this. 5th form, P-I-T, miss, P-I-T, pit. Oh, well done, Jilly. As a reward, you can go home early. Then she goes, anyone? And I got my hand up and go, and she goes, Michael. What did you do to that lunch? Well, today, miss, I wanted to play in the sandpit with Jill and John, but they wouldn't let me because I'm a Māori. She said, that's terrible, Michael. That's terrible. That's racial discrimination. Did you know that? That's race. You spell racial discrimination. Boom. So that is the classic example of a joke that I made about me.
Love it.
So for me, that was the end. And I remember, I was on compo at the time, actually, when I was doing all this. I busted my leg, and I was waiting to go into hospital and get my leg fixed. And so it was a chance for me to actually sit there and do this comedy. So anyway, the day that I'm about to go, I go to the Kitty O'Brien's, and I put on a suit, and I'm dressed like Eddie Murphy, right? Because Eddie's my man. Yeah. I've got a fucking black polo neck. I've got a bright yellow coat. I've got, a suit pants on. I walk in, and Paul Horan's on the door, and he goes, so, yes, that's just one. I went, yeah, no. So who's on tonight? How do I, and I wanted to say who's on and how can I get on, but all that came out of my mouth was, I got stage fright right there and then. And, well, one, please. And so I took my one ticket, and then I left. I went outside, and I cursed myself. I said, well, if you got stage fright talking to the guy on the door, how the hell can you go up there? So I went home, practiced some more. The next week I went up there full of confidence, and I was playing a character now. That's the other thing. The person that was on the stage wasn't me. It was a character, and the character was, a street savvy stand-up comedian who's not scared of anybody. And so I walk in there, and, so who are you? Am I still there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I walk up there, and I said, so who's on tonight? Oh, da-da-da. How do I get on? Oh, you got to come back we got a rookie night in a couple of weeks. And I went, so who's on? And they went, Jeremy Corbett, da-da-da, da-da-da. I said, well, I've been coming here for the last 6 weeks. I'm here to tell you, all your comedians are shit. I think I'm funnier than all of them. And if you let me go on tonight and no one laughs, I opened my wallet, I pulled out $400 and I gave it to them. I said, if no one laughs or anyone walks out while I'm up there, you can buy the whole bar drinks and you'll never see me again. He went, hold on, I'll be right back. And they ran out to the back room. So the conversation out the back room is, there's a Maori guy out there who thinks you guys are shit. He's given me all this money. If he dies, like he's going to buy the whole bar of drinks. So next thing, everyone's got their heads out the door going, there he is, the cheeky fellow dressed like Eddie Murphy. Look at him. Snigger, snigger, snigger. David Downs was the MC that night. David Downs came over. Now, I was fully prepared to go first, right? This is how much I'd studied. I was fully prepared to go first. Now, first was the worst position.
Yeah.
Why? Because there was no stand-up comedy in New Zealand. We didn't have television. Video wasn't really out, but at this stage. So, we were still at the people telling joke stages, which is why Andrew Kovacevic was huge back in those days. AK was the joke king.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So he starred Nicholas. These guys were using jokes. So, they were the big hits back in this time. So, anyway, David Downs, and I was ready to go first. And he did something that I didn't expect. He said, he goes, hello, I'm Dave, I'm the MC. Where would you like to go on the set list? And I was like, are you shitting me, mate? Are you shitting me? I went, I'll go last in the second. And he went, wow, that's a tough slot. And I'm going, well, that just shows you how much you know, pal. Last in the second set was the dream slot. So the first three comedians who do the first 25, 30 minutes in the first set, they're setting the stage up. They're getting a shit from people. They're getting confusion. People aren't licking up yet. By the end of the first set, they're ready for a drink and they're ready to talk. So they all go for a talk. Oh, well, this is unusual. I didn't really expect. Yeah, it is quite funny. Then the next two comedians that come on in the second set, we're into it now. So by the time the last comedian in the second set comes on, the stage is ready. The third set is a really tough slot, and that third set would usually go to Andrew Clay because Andy had just come back from Sydney. Oh, the best comedian in New Zealand on the stand-up comedy scene for the last 25 years. He's a lazy bastard, but still the best stand-up comedian ever, better than everybody, and he is the founding father of stand-up comedy. So by the time I got on this particular night, so all the comedians kill. Now there's this myth out there that you don't want the comedian before you to do well. It's bullshit. I always want everyone to do well. Why? Because if you do well, I'm going to do well. You're getting the audience warmed up. So everyone's killed this night. No one's made any mistakes. The crowd's humming. Dave Downs comes on, and he starts warming the crowd up. Like, you had a good night? Yeah. Has it been great? Yeah. Well, we've got a Maori guy here now who thinks that none of us are funny. Ooh.
Oh, my God. He didn't say that, did he?
He did, right? And I'm going, you asshole. I'm standing in the doorway. And he goes, no. It's okay. It's okay. This is his first ever night. Oh. So if he's funny, we're all going to laugh, right? Yeah. If he sucks, we're all going to laugh louder. Oh, yeah, here he comes. So the first thing I had to do when I got on the stage was smash him. So I don't remember what the joke was, but I hit him, which got a laugh, which relaxed everyone straight away. And then I was into my comedy set. So the three jokes that I had, my whole set had timed out at 8 minutes at home. There was 12 minutes because I hadn't built in the laugh. So by the time I got to the last three jokes, so I'm already over, but everyone's laughing. I told my first take-home joke. The take-home joke. So I've always finished with three take-home jokes. I finished my first take-home joke, which was a golf joke, and it got such a big laugh that I knew if I attempted to, I wasn't gonna match that laugh. So at that point down, and it took a lot of self-control. I went, that's it from me. Thanks very much. And I walked off to people chanting, "We want more. We want more. We want more." Wow. And I remember standing out the back. Now, Here's where the story gets good.
Oh, good.
Yeah, because it's been shit so far. But the story gets good. Little did I know, at the beginning of my set, there was an English comedian touring the country, a comedian who wrote The Young Ones, who wrote Blackadder. His name was Ben Elton. He was touring the country at the time, and he was selling his book. What I didn't realize that he walked into the club, was standing by the door and looking at the stage from the second David Downs walked up and started his intro. I came off the stage. As I came off the stage, I went out to the back room. All the comedians were over by the bar. I was in the corner and I was buzzing, man. I was floating. I could hear this crowd and everything. And through the crowd splits and in walks Ben Elton. And Ben Elton comes up to me and he goes, "Man, that was a smashing set that you did up there." And I was like, "Oh, thanks, man." Like, I knew obviously who he was. And I was like, "Wow, thanks very much." Wow. And he goes, "That wasn't your first time on stage though, right?" And I go, "Yeah, no, that was my first time." And he goes, No, that can't be your first time." So we had this thing and I go, "Look, I've done a few family gigs." Now, the thing about the experience that I had with family gigs, so weddings, funerals, all of those types of things, I was always my family spokesperson. But the thing that taught me was you could never repeat a joke. You always have to have new material. Why? Because it's the same freaking audience. You can't go out there and tell the same jokes over and over again. So I was really prolific at rolling material over. So anyway, he come over and goes, "If that was your first gig, I'm here to tell you, you're going to be famous." He said, "Look, I've got to go, but thanks very much." And he left and he walked down, the back stairs, the back entrance way through the kitchen. He went down those stairs like this fading god out into the misty outfields. And everyone came running over. And I remember Brendan Lovegrove, he came up to me, he says, "What did Ben Elton say?" I said, "Ben Elton said, I'm going to be famous."
Wow.
Now that night I went outside and my car had been stolen, gone. And it was a good car. It was a Ford Telstar. Not many people had one of those. Everyone else was driving around pieces of shit, but I had this Ford Telstar. I didn't even care. I remember getting home that night and just absolutely buzzing. And I caught up with Ben Elton a couple of years later when I was in London. He was doing a book signing, and I went in there and he went, "Oh, you're that geezer from New Zealand, aren't you?" I went, "Yeah." He goes, "How's it all going?" And, he said, "How's it all going?" I said, "Well, in New Zealand, I'm a little bit famous." He went, Told you.
New Zealand.
So no, this was years before that. As it happened in that time when I was over in London was when I ended up getting my first taste of cocaine, which was basically the beginning of the end. That was when everything started to spiral out of control.
We have a huge cocaine habit.
Yeah, massive.
Really?
But yeah, well, but I didn't. Most people think that people like me who have drug and alcohol problems, we do it to have fun. No drug addict or alcoholic ever does drink or drugs to have fun. We do it to run from hell. And for me, that hell was this little inner critic constantly telling me that I'm not good enough, constantly telling me everyone else was better. I was a relentless perfectionist. So what I used to do in those early days, my manager was Phil Adams, who's a really good guy. And what I would do is I would practice all week. So I got to know the other comedians. They'd come over and go, "Hey, we're all going to play golf." I said, "No, I'm practicing." And they go, "What do you mean practicing?" I'm going to practice. I thought, practice on stage. I go, "No, you practice on stage. I fucking practice here because I'm going to be the best." I remember after that talk, Paul Horan came out and tried to give me $40 and pay me for the gig. Give me my $400 back and give me $40. I went, "No, you can keep your $40. And I remember saying this to him specifically: "You keep the $40 because I'm going to own this industry." That was my relentless attitude, and I didn't say it arrogantly. And I didn't mean it to sound arrogant. This was just my focus. This is how I knew that I could be the best in the world at this, like it was like I'd searched this whole lifetime to be the best in the world at something. And this comedy, I really, truly, in my heart of hearts, felt that I could be the best in the world at it. But I'm a notorious self-sabotager. And when I get close to something, and I did get close, you know, I was at the Montreal Comedy Festival in 1995, I think it was, where I had my first real big break and completely shot my bolt and blew it, and self-sabotaged on the biggest stage of my life. And that was the best of the Uptown Comics with Dave Chappelle hosting. A young Dave Chappelle was the host. Wow. Full black band, the whole 9 yards. And yeah, the first couple of jokes didn't go well, and instead of sucking it up and pushing through, I just turned on everybody there, and yeah, basically died on my ass. And but gave myself an excuse by saying it wasn't me, it was the audience. And you know, I had lots of excuses, and then went to London straight afterwards, and then ended up, you know, like drowning my sorrows in cocaine. But like I said, for me, the coke and the drugs were my way of escaping myself. Comedy was also perfect for me because it meant that I was always with people. My biggest fear back then was being stuck in a room by myself, because when I was in a room by myself, this inner critic would be sitting there telling me I'm a loser. It would always take me back to places that I didn't want to go, breakups with my first wife, you know, experiences where I'd been cheated on by partners. It would always, you know, he'd be there at his most relentless at those times. And so for me, drugs and alcohol was a way to escape myself. Yeah. So it was a big journey. And from there, you know, the transition for me was by, you know, my comedy was very confrontational. Why did I choose that path of confrontation? Well, it was quite simple, really. It was my way of escaping. So if something went wrong, I wouldn't have to look in the mirror and own it. I would always blame other people. And how I blamed other people is I would shoot them down. You know, I would just shoot them down. So originally my comedy was about things that pissed me off. Eventually it was about people who pissed me off, and then it became really personal. And, you know, anyone who followed my career, you can see the dark path that it went down, and culminating in my attack.
I think towards the end, you sort of went to a bit of a dark place. I can remember seeing one gig, and this was probably, you know, when you were at your unhappiest, I think. You were very confrontational with the crowd. It was almost like, or the audience, it was almost like you had turned up to go, I'm going to friggin' pick a fight with someone. Is that fair?
You know, that's, you know, yeah. Again, that's the self-sabotage perspective that I had, and that was, you know, that was my way of dealing with stress. You know, it's a bit like, you know, I'll break off with you before you can break off with me. I know you're about to reject me, so fuck you, I'll reject you first. You know, and this is a pattern that not only people like me do. I mean, it's a pattern you witness every single day with people, you know. And so for me, it was about, you know, in 2013, I was really, you know, my comedy style had come to an end. There were a whole lot of, you know, young comedians coming up talking about what I thought was idiotic shit. And, you know, this whole, you know, I was the leader of the anti-PC brigade, and suddenly there was a world full of acceptance and a world full of emotion and a world full of people talking their feelings and all the things that I railed against. So I could see my comedy career coming to an end, which was around the time that you saw me, you know, which was, you know, I'm going to deal with all you jerk-offs, you know, and, you know, and show you that I don't care about what you're thinking, and I don't care what anyone else thinks. And in 2013, Joanna and I had basically, you know, I've been through a messy divorce, and sold my house. I was living in a rented house out in South Auckland, too ashamed to tell my friends where I was living. And, you know, the recurring thought that was going through my head was I was, and this is not being racist, but the thing that I was thinking, yeah, typical Maori idiots, had it all, blew it all. You're just like everyone else, and this is how I thought people saw me, So I was in a really confused state, and then I got a drink driving ticket. I lost my license for having too many demerit points. I'd been off the piss for about 6 years that time, but I suddenly got lost my license through losing my demerit points, and went for a ride on my Harley one day, and a cop who was chasing another car turned around and followed me, and I was on the speed limit. I wasn't breaking any laws. My first thing to him was, the hell you pulled me over for, mate? You're chasing this other car. And he goes, it's just your unlucky day, mate. So I end up getting
demerit points.
No, I end up getting 200 hours of community service.
Oh,
and so I did a deal with the judge. I'll get community service, and I get to keep my license because I need my license to work. And then I end up going and speaking in my very first school, a school that lost kids to suicide, and it really changed my life. I mean, my original plan was to go up to school, cheer the kids up with jokes. That was my plan. When I got there, I realized immediately that jokes weren't appropriate. So in the couple of minutes, I guess, that it took me to walk from the back of the hall to the front, I decided that I was just going to open myself up, make myself vulnerable, and talk to kids about this little demon that I'd always had my whole life. And the kids resonated with it, and it changed my life completely.
How many talks have you done to schools?
Oh, bro.
We're talking hundreds, maybe thousands.
So I've spoken to well over 200,000 kids and listened to well over 200,000 kids in this country. I don't think there's anyone in this country that has been in front of as many kids as I have, and listened to them. And this is why I get really defensive about some of the findings that I've had when people who are funded by the government sit there and say, there's no evidence of what you're talking about. And I go, well, sure, it's not evidence. It's just what kids are telling me. And if you are the same guy listening to the people just because you've got a lab coat on and you've got some flash letters after your name, suddenly if it was you, it would be evidence. But over the next 6 years, I was trying to figure out where I fit in the great scheme of things. So when I first started doing this in 2007, like everybody else, I try to be everything to everybody. And what happens there is, like I started the Nutters Club, and then I try to fix the world. Why was I trying to fix the world? Because when you're fixing the world, you don't have to look at your own problems. I just ignored my own problems and went around talking and letting other people dump their shit on me and talking about that stuff. And eventually you're stuck with everyone else's problems, and having not dealt with yours, you end up in a massive stage of a massive breakdown. So then you disconnect, and then you've got a whole lot of abuse for people that you said you were going to do this. And so then you're beating yourself up again, and it's an ever-decreasing circle. So when I came back from that in 2013, it was like, right, so where am I going to focus? I really like talking to these kids, and suicide was an issue for them. So we look at this now, where in the spectrum of suicide do we fit? So the next thing for me was to, just like comedy, is to scope the outlay. Work out what's happening, work out, everything that's going on. So what I eventually worked out was our system is reactive. We wait for something to break before we attempt to fix it. There was no proactivity at all. We were funding ambulances at the bottom of the cliff rather than building fences at the top. Why were we always looking at ambulances at the bottom of the cliff? Because the government only funded ambulances. No one was funding fences. but I could see straight away that the need was up at the top of the cliff. Now, what were the fences that we needed to build? Attitudinal change is the first step to doing anything. Why is attitudinal change? Why is positive societal attitudinal change the most important thing? Because you could have the best mental health system in the world, right? You could have the best experts in the world. You could throw $1 billion a day at it. But if people aren't engaging in the system, you're throwing money down a deep, dark hole. Why do we have to change attitudes? Well, because there's so much stigma around mental health. For example, in kids counseling, whenever I mention to people that of the 10,660 sessions that we gave out for free last year because of Gumboot Friday, more than half of those sessions went to 8 to 11-year-olds. 8 to 11-year-olds. And most people go, oh my God, I didn't realize there was such a big problem with 8 to 11-year-olds. And why are they saying that? Because I've got their stigma lens on. Because the only way kids can get counselling in New Zealand right now, government-funded counselling, is to be diagnosed with a mental health problem. Do you see the issue now?
Yeah.
So every time you mention your child's going to a counsellor, automatically we go, oh God, they're mentally ill. And so that was the big thing that we have to break. What I also found out and discovered after talking to kids is that 80% of kids who have long-lasting thoughts of suicide never ask for help. And when you dig into that and say, why aren't you asking for help? They're not asking for help because they're worried about what people will think. They're worried about what people will say, and they're worried about what society will do with that information. In other words, Shawnee, they're worried about us. They're worried about us. Now, you think about that. You think about that. I'm not going to reach out because I'm worried about what you're thinking or what you're saying or what you're going to do with that. Now, the irony is our message.
Damn. I'm just going to hold on for a little bit because he might come back to us. Mikey? Gee, it was starting to get really good, wasn't it? Oh, hang on. I think he's coming back. Yeah, we lost you, but I think we've got you back, hopefully. Are you there, Mike? Speak to me, brother. I think we're having problems, mate. I think we are having problems with our connection. Bugger. Just going to hang in there, folks, just for a little bit longer because looks like he's kind of trying to reboot or something. So we might just stay here for a while. Later on, I'm going to be speaking to Lisa King around about 3:30. Lisa King is the founder of Eat My Lunch. So they've got some challenging times at the moment because all the schools are closed. But what she's doing is, are you back, Mike?
I think I'm back. I think it's my... I did some
brilliant padding. I like sold the next interview, which is going to be Lisa King later on. Are you're frozen again? Damn.
No, everyone's wanting to use the internet right now. So why don't we? I tell you what.
It's working now. It's working now.
This is part one. This is part one.
I like that.
So why don't we come back? So we're right up to the part.
Yes, this is part one. That's a good point. I'm going to have a chat to Mike, and we're going to work out how we do part two, because I want to start talking about all this wonderful work, Gumboot Friday. So, hey, let's just see if we can. No, he's gone. He's gone. Right. So. Sorry, it is sort of a tough time, isn't it, with everybody on the internet, and so we are going to have technical problems like this. It's just the way it is. But thanks for your encouragement. The comments that come in are really nice, and I really enjoy doing this. I really love it. I love talking to inspirational people. I love representing inspirational people. And yeah, it's, I said to you before, it's kind of a bit selfish. It just makes me feel really good. You know, I really enjoy it. I love listening to Mike. He's just such a great guy, such a good friend, such a good person. I'm going to post some stuff up later just on how we can support Gumboot Friday. Gee, he's done some great work, hasn't he? And the thing is, his wife Jo, wow, she's an amazing person too. She's an amazing person, very kind. And they just dedicate their lives to this, guys. Seriously, they absolutely dedicate their lives to it. And I get really, I'm not someone that gets very angry. I get very pissed off, quite frankly, when I see, you know, the tall poppy bloody New Zealand clobbering machine kick into gear every now and then against him, because it's just uncalled for. It's unnecessary. And it's just, I think that's sort of that shows the worst of us when we do that kind of crap. We need to support Mike in everything that he does, because, you know, Mike and Jo, because they're supporting our kids. They're keeping our kids alive. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. And I'll tell you what, at the other end of this, or during this period, there's going to be even more demand for it. So we've really got to support him. And that fly is buzzing around. Later on at 3:30, I'm going to have a chat to Lisa King, and she's founder of Eat My Lunch, and they've donated about 1.5 million lunches throughout New Zealand for school kids. Incredible. And they're doing it. I think there's some challenging times there for them at the moment, obviously, because they're reliant on people, paying. It's their business model. I mean, they're a business as well as helping kids. So I think they'll set up a Give a Little page. So we'll get some more info from Lisa on that later on. And then you heard Mike and I talk about Otis Frizzell. I don't know Otis that well, only through Facebook, and that I buy his prints, as I said in the chat with Mike. When I have a bit of success, even if it's, when I hit a little milestone, I go, you know what? I'm going to go and spend $150 and buy myself some art from Otis and Mike. And it's a little tradition I have. It's the only art that I have in the place. And sometimes things are tight, so they actually stay there, and I have to wait for another milestone so I can actually go and frame it. Oh, I'll show you this. 1 second. This is one of my favorite things, because as you all know, I'm a huge Donald Trump fan. Huge. That is Donald Trump. Underneath it is fake. I really love that. So you got to be careful where you put that. People go, what the hell is that doing in your living room? So yeah, but Otis is, I don't know Otis well. I don't know Mike that well, just through Facebook exchanges and stuff like that. But Otis and Sarah actually inspired me to start Essential Talent. They didn't say, hey, Sean, we think you should start Essential Talent. I just followed their journey with Lucky Taco, and it inspired me. I just went, I should start my own business. So I'm really looking forward to that. Otis was actually supposed to be my first guest that I ever did, ever talked to. And I'm like probably a lot of people, I can tend to procrastinate. I get a lot of stuff done, but I can procrastinate on stuff as well. And there was this microphone just sitting here, just collecting dust basically. And it's probably been here, I'm talking months. months and months. It's just sat there. And then through this period, I thought, plug the damn thing in and start chatting to people. And Otis was going to be my first guest because I just think he's a cool guy. But we'll have a chat to him tonight around 7. So Lisa at 3:30, Otis at around 7 o'clock. He sent me a message the other day. He said, so how long do you think we'll be talking for? And I just sent him a reply, 4 hours and 20 minutes. He said, I better go and study up on myself then. I don't think it'll be 4 hours, 20 minutes. I think it'll be 15, 20 minutes, but who knows? Hear that fly? Banjo's very quiet today, just chilling out. Anyway, I must go because it's been an hour. God, has anybody actually gone through the whole hour? God, well, the Mike part was really interesting, wasn't it? So that's part 1 of Mike, and we'll do part 2 at a later stage. Be good. See you soon. Oh, guess what? I'm getting comments from people saying, can you please stop wearing a t-shirt? Can you please put a business shirt on and a suit jacket? So, yeah, I can understand that. I actually need to buy some new shirts from Rod and Gun. So I must get onto that at some point. Anyway, we'll see you at 3:30 if you've got time. We can watch the replay later for Lisa King, Eat My Lunch. 7 o'clock, Otis Frizzell, Lucky Taco. Amazing guy. See you guys.